The Biosco Learning monthly webinar series begins now with you joining us today. These will be standard moving forward from here. Recruiting for the future, how to attract talent in 2020 and beyond. We're only 1 minute away from the start of the program. Please stand by. And once again, please feel free to share the link. Anyone's more than welcome to join us today live for the event. Alternatively, it will be made available on demand at a later time. And for all of you that have been standing by, we want to thank you very much. Biosco Learning is proud to welcome everyone here today for the Recruiting for the Future, How to Attract Talent in 2020 and Beyond webinar. This is with Ricky Baez, featuring the HR lady, Wendy Sellers. With that, let's open up the microphones and start our session for the day.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, give me 1 second. I got to bring this up in here. 1 second, and we are up and live. All right, excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first webinar, monthly webinar from Biosco Learning. My name is Ricky Baez from Biosco Learning, and with me I do have Wendy, the HR lady Sellers. She's joining me today. We're going to co-facilitate recruiting for the future, how to bring people in 2020 and beyond. How are you, Wendy?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome, awesome. And also, I want to let you know, if you, it's that voice you hear, the voice of the franchise. That is Mr. JC from HR Talk helping us today. So I want to give a big shout out to Mr. JC. Hey, everybody, clap around. Go ahead, start clapping. You got the clapping thing? No, we're not clapping?
Thank you very much, Ricky. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So hopefully this is, well, again, this is our first one, and hopefully we'll get more of these later on. But as we go, we're going to learn how these things work. But it's not going to be your regular webinar to what that you're used to. This is just somebody, when they just get on their computer with their headphone, they just start talking. Wendy and I, she has a different view when it comes to recruiting than I do. So that's why I love working with her, because we go back and forth, and that's how you learn, with healthy conflict, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's duke it out.
Yeah, but you're all about healthy conflict. It's just conflict, period. It's healthy.
Healthy.
You don't care if it's healthy or not.
Healthy would be good. No, it's good to hear different opinions, because we all have different experiences. So what might work for you in X situation might not work for you in a different situation. So I think this will be fun.
Absolutely. So with that said, are you ready to get going?
Let's do it.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, so let's go ahead and get the presentation up and running. Give me 1 second. Once I do this, here we go. And live. All right, so what we're talking about today is Recruiting for the Future, How to Attract Talent in 2020 and Beyond. And Wendy, I don't know what your experience has been as far as recruiting is concerned, but it's gotten harder and harder and harder as time goes along, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I was running late today because I was helping a client fill a difficult to fill position, and we'll get into that more in the show here of why was it difficult.
So, but it's because as a recruiter, I'm a former recruiter myself. I know there's a lot of people out there that are recruiters, and it's not as easy as it sounds. You can't just go out there, post a job, and next thing you know, the heavens open and all these resumes fall on your lap. It doesn't really work that way. But a lot of people seem to think that's the way that works, right? But I'm here to tell you, it doesn't. It really doesn't work that way, because what happens, Wendy, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, what happens is that somebody leaves, they're not expecting that person leaving, and then that hiring authority comes to you and says, oh my God, they're going crazy. Oh my God, I need to get this position filled ASAP.
Right.
And of course, you as a recruiter, you've been there hanging out, just waiting for that business partner to come over and have that conversation, because you have nothing else to do, right?
Nothing else to do. Well, and it's funny because, you do post the job and you do get all these resumes, and they're all not qualified. They're not even in the same industry, but it's because of this wonderful tool called the internet.
And who invented the internet? Do you know? JC, you know who invented the internet, right?
Yes, that was invented by Al Gore. It was later renamed by George Bush.
That's why I keep him around, right? Because he has this wealth of knowledge.
So technically, it's the internets.
Internet, that's plural, right? Because the World Wide Webs.
Yeah,
that's what it is. So it's. We thought it was a good idea to bring this to everybody because as more people come into the workforce that have different work ethic, that have a different rationale, different point of view when it comes to what it is to work or be in the workplace. And whereas us older recruiters, we grew up in our career with a different sense of what that meant. So the whole point of this today is how to shift your view on how to view that kind of work ethic, that kind of talent out there, and how do you bring them in? But not only bring them in, how do you keep them for the long run?
Right. Absolutely.
So with that said, let's go ahead and get going. So the big question, Wendy, why do we have issues? In your opinion, what is the biggest issue with recruiting right now?
People.
Okay. People. What about people? What's wrong or what's right with people?
There's a lot of them, and a lot of them are not qualified for the jobs that are actually available right now.
All right. So people is the issue, but then again, you need people to fill these positions. Yeah. So the issue is the wrong people. But from my perspective, I agree with you, but from my perspective is the issue that I see right now is record low unemployment numbers. So right now we are at a 50-year low. 50-year low, which that's great for the economy, is great for an ecosystem and a society to thrive. Horrible for HR leaders, horrible for recruiters, because it really is hard to actually bring those people in and bring in that right talent. So it's from my perspective, at least, that's what I see. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. It is the fact that most people that are willing to work have a job. However, many of those jobs are low paying, and the burden is then put on to the employer to provide, I believe, which is another item you're about to pop up, benefits.
That's right.
Right, especially healthcare. And so, our country is made up of small businesses, and the small businesses have a difficult time providing those benefits because it's expensive. And so then employees who are able and willing to work jump into another job, and they can job hop because it's okay right now because there's jobs available.
Right, absolutely.
When the job's not available, it's not okay.
No, it is not. And another one is money.
Yeah. Money
is a big motivating factor. But you know what? Nowadays, it's not. Look, money is important, right?
Right.
Do you work because you just like to work, or do you just need money?
Well, I'm kind of weird, so yeah.
I mean,
but
kind of.
We need.
Okay, fine.
We do. We need money, and especially for low-paying jobs, somebody may leave because of 50 cents.
So, can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Because I love that topic. If you have somebody that leaves for 50 cents, I mean, think about it. It's in a 40-hour work week, like they're leaving for $20 a week, right? That's why they're going to leave. What does that say about the culture? When somebody says it is worth it for me to change my whole life, it's worth it for me to leave this culture and go into a culture that I really haven't verified for $20 a week. What does that tell you?
What it tells me, well, there's two things. One, the job is probably paying less than it should be paying. So that's the first thing, because if you're willing to leave for $20 a week, that means you actually need that $20, right? That's a big decision. So if you're making $10 an hour, that's what, $400 a week. So it's, that's $20 is a lot of money.
It is
at that point. The second thing is the culture, which, we could talk about all day. So
we can have all week on the culture.
We won't talk about that too much, but
we're not going to do that. I get you.
And we're going to actually, our presentation is going into the culture and being prepared and making sure that you're really, really are recruiting and not just putting warm bodies, or as I said the other day in my evening talk, cold bodies.
All right, and we'll get to that in a bit. So can we control the unemployment numbers? Can we control the benefits? Can we control the money? I mean, as recruiters, what I have seen is that it's a lot of people do focus on the money. A lot of people do focus on the benefits. I mean, nothing much we can do about the unemployment number, but are these variables that we can control, Wendy?
It depends on what your role is in the organization,
okay,
right? And how big your role, your organization is. For smaller companies, the recruiter may also be the HR director. They may also be the marketing director, so it depends. So yeah, you do have some control over that.
Yeah.
But for larger organizations, you may, you are, not that it's just recruiting, but you may be just focused on recruiting. And so you can't really control necessarily the finances or the benefits. You might be able to influence somebody at your organization to make some changes by providing data, reports, statistics, things like that. That, if you're owner of your organization or whoever's running the show, if their whole goal is to just make money, then give them reports of how they're losing money with turnover. And then that's how they will increase the pay.
And why? Because as the higher up you go in an organization as an executive, the more of the language of numbers that you speak. Right. So you have to show that, right? So from my perspective, so you're saying depends, right? I'm saying we cannot, right? It's so as far as the benefits is concerned, if you work for an organization, like a huge organization, right, where they got people, units in different states, different countries, it will be harder for that recruiter to be that influential. But like you said earlier, it's our country, the backbone of our country, the backbone of our economy is small business.
Right.
So a small business owner, they can have that influence, but at the same time, we got to understand how you and I shop for a car. We got to be mindful about how much we're spending. You got to take that hat on and just think the same way. Think the same way from a business owner. They can't just dish out dollars. They have to get some kind of return on investment and value for that. So you're saying depends. I'm saying, yeah, sure, depends. I kind of agree with you. But what can we control? We can't control. I mean, obviously, okay, we both agree at the very least, we can't control the low unemployment numbers. We can't. So what can we control?
I think we can control the message, how you help sell the benefits package. Even if you have a not great benefits package, you are now, as a recruiter, an actor, an actress, and you're a salesperson, and you have to figure out, how am I going to sell this so that a candidate wants to actually apply here.
Say that again. Say that last part again, because that last part is something that's near and dear to my heart. You said that a recruiter is a what?
A salesperson.
Why are they in sales?
Especially now with the high competition for candidates. I'm not even saying employees, I'm saying candidates. You have to sell them a story to say, I want to work there.
Yes.
For the same amount of money.
So what you're telling me is what we can't control is the idea of becoming part of a team and the idea of a fulfilling career path. Because you're right, there is a lot of competition out there. And when you start talking about education, start talking about talent and skill set, in your opinion, a college education now, is it more or less valuable than a college education 30 years ago? Less. Why?
And mind you, I have 3 degrees. So at one point, I did think it was much valuable, because the skills that are needed right now that we're lacking in our country you don't get them in college. So you get them by hands-on working alongside people, technical training, whatever it might be. So we really. And again, I'm not saying don't hire college educated people, because there's something else for college educated people, but you pay a lot for college.
Yeah, you do.
And then there's a lot of people that didn't go to college, and when you both get to a certain age or a certain point in your career, you end up making the same amount of money. It just took maybe somebody without college a little different path to get there. But, you know, manufacturing, for example, you know, they're not looking for college degrees. You
Correct.
know? They're looking for
Well,
technical.
it depends, right? If they're looking for an engineer, right? So you're not going to hire an engineer to design your stuff who may not have that technical background. But I do get what you're saying. And the reason I'm focusing on the college education now is because there's a lot more college degrees out there now than they were before. So with that said, you have to know how educated the talent pool is. And you have to know what they want. You have to know what attracts them. Because it's not just money.
Didn't you and I just get a fake certification too?
Wait, no, you did.
You didn't do it? I got
no, because it was too hard. It was too hard.
So, you know, one of the things we're talking about here is some HR consultant created a fake HR certificate and then just put it out there for the world to download and put on their resume. So I downloaded it the other day and I was like, yay, I have a certificate. And then somebody on Instagram said to me, congratulations. And I responded, I said, hey, just so you know, it's fake. And I said, you know, be careful who you're hiring and check their actual background. And he said, well, I fell for it, and now I get your point.
Look at that. Look at that. So I didn't know about it. Actually, JC sent it to me. It's like, hey, you know what? You need this certification. And I'm like, wow, okay, I'm going to dig into it. I dug into it. I'm like, this is crap. This is just somebody. And
it was just a PDF.
What's it called? Yeah, it's somebody making fun of it and saying it's. I guess they're poking fun at how many certifications are out there. But it was actually pretty funny because I thought it was legit. I think it's hilarious that you signed up for it. You just answered a few questions.
No, you didn't even answer a question. You literally downloaded it on a PDF, and then it allowed you to type in your name and then download it again. So there's one more bullet point.
Oh, there is?
So,
there is?
Yeah,
we go. Oh, the idea of the story we give to candidates. But so before we jump in there real quick, it's again, the reason I was focusing on that is because you have to know what kind of people are out there, what kind of background do they have, how proficient they are. And once you start building that picture, you're able to kind of focus on those things that they're looking for. And that's how you shape your story. That's how you shape your story to sell to the candidates. And if you can give to them or sell the idea that you can have a fulfilling, rewarding career with this organization, that to me, I don't know about you, but to me speaks more value. It has more thunderous sound about what kind of an organization you have, just a lot more than money, culture, benefits, and everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing, just to wrap up the college part is, you know, from 30 years ago, even 10 years ago, you can now get a college degree from sitting in your living room, you know, and then like, do you really need the actual 4 years, or can you get the same knowledge with the use of technology in a 6-month program? So, you know, when I go in, and I'm an HR consultant, so when I go into my clients, I say, give me job descriptions. I'll be fortunate if they even have them. Otherwise, we create them together, and we'll get to that later. You guys can call me on that. But, you know, a lot of them say, I want a college degree. And I said, I want to know why the receptionist needs a college degree. I explain that to me. Well, we would like that. I'm like, okay, well, I would like you to put preferred then. And then,
don't get me started on that.
So we don't have that much time. But let's go on to the next topic.
Let's go on to the next one, because that just, I think we just started touching on the next webinar. All right. So the recruiting process, right? It's for me, I think the recruiting process obviously starts with the recruiter. The recruiter is the face. The recruiter is the person who really, it shows what the organization is about. So that's why, again, I'm sticking to the fact that recruiters are salespeople. They are the representative of the organization. So you have to put that mindset on that anytime you go into a job fair, anytime you go into a networking event, you are the representation of the entire culture of that organization. You've got to get that through your head because whatever you say, whatever you do, people are going to associate you with that brand and the brand with you. Absolutely. So for the business leaders out there who you're looking for just any recruiter, don't just look for any recruiter. You have to find somebody who is the cheerleader for the organization. So I'll give you a great example. I can never, ever, ever be a car salesman. Never. I would be if it was for Honda. I would be if it was for Hyundai because I love that brand. Mm-hmm. Now, if you stuck me at an auto dealer like Mazda, I can't stand Mazda. I can't fake the love for the Mazda. I have to really love it and enjoy it. So the same way, if you get an employer or recruiter who just has a bad attitude, and that recruiter just doesn't really feel it, and that's the person you're sending to the job fairs, no wonder you're not getting anybody in, right?
Exactly.
It's not happening.
Yeah, so I think this goes back to even with the warm bodies or the cold bodies, make sure your recruiter is not the warm or cold body as well.
Yeah. All right, so the next one is, but the interviewer has the ultimate impact on the candidate accepting the offer. This is big. This is big because the recruiter brings them in. And for anybody out there listening who is not really into HR or doesn't know the inner workings of HR, welcome. But it's with that said, a lot of people seem to think that the recruiter is the one who brings them in. They interview them, they make the decision, and that's it. Right? So no, the recruiter's job is to sell, bring it in, but the interviewer, whether it's a hiring authority, a team manager, whatever it is, they are the ones who has the biggest impact in the candidate accepting the offer.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about how you place an ad. Right?
Oh, so you get the outdated job description and you copy and paste that into the job ad. No, don't do that. Please don't do that. Please stop doing that immediately.
I've seen that. You know what? And some large organizations do that as well. They're like, you know what? Let's open a requisition, whether it's to the brass ring or any other APS system that ATS system that they have, and they just open the rec, and there's all this legal mumbo jumbo.
Yep.
Right? Must be able to lift 35 pounds. Must be able to stand for this. It's boring.
Yeah, it really is. So the way I do it, and I think you're kind of on the same page, is, it's a marketing piece. The job ad is a marketing piece. And so, yes, you need to have the job requirements in there. Do you need to have the entire job description? It depends. It depends how long it is. You can attach the job description or refer to it to your main website and say, click here to download the job description. But, it also depends. Is it something that requires a PhD, or is it something that requires, maybe it's a manual labor job where you need to be able to communicate with others and be physically fit? Well, then you could train the rest.
Yeah.
I was just helping a client with a tough to fill position, and I'm looking at the job ad. And so, of course, I redesigned everything like, hey, we're a great company. Here's our company values. Here's your benefits. Here's the time. We have weekly, potluck lunches, things like that, selling the culture. But then the job description itself, I literally said to my client, do you have to teach somebody here all of this? And she said, absolutely. It's completely unique to our company. So then it doesn't matter if they've had this experience before. She said, no, I need somebody with the attitude and then these two requirements.
There you go.
And I'm like, okay. So soon as I, redid the job ad and made it all, hey, we're a great organization to work for. And they really are. You have to make sure you're actually telling the truth.
People will find out.
We had candidates when we closed the job like within 2 weeks.
Could you imagine, just close your eyes and just picture, Kraft macaroni and cheese. Could you imagine Kraft macaroni and cheese advertising the macaroni and cheese, but the only thing they put on there is the
ingredients?
Right? Could you imagine, right? So here's advertisement, right? How many calories, a bunch of ingredients that you can't pronounce. No one's going to buy that shit. Yeah. It's just not going to happen, right? So, yes. So what the analogy here is that you really got to put a marketing plan together. Right. You've got to put it on there to make sure that people see what the organization is all about. So spot on.
Yeah.
See, now we're macaroni and cheese. Now we're macaroni and cheese. Well, right. All right. So finding the candidates. How do you find the awesome candidates? So I'll tell you. I'll answer, right? So the best way to find the best candidate is to just go ahead and get your resume, find a bunch of fax numbers, and just fax it to all the recruiting offices, right?
What's a fax?
Isn't that? I have a fax in my office. Do you?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe not, right? No. Okay. So fine. They go to monster.com and they apply. Right?
Yeah, sure. No.
Okay. All right. So where do you find them?
Yeah. So some of the top online resources that candidates use and that, employers use are listed here. So Indeed, LinkedIn, and ZipRecruiter are the top 3 that most recruiters are using. And again, I'm talking about the general population. Yeah. So this includes a lot of small businesses that aren't going to have these big fancy accounts and systems. And then there's state workforce agencies, which we'll get into soon. And then, of course, social media, which we'll talk about as well.
So what it's now, look, we don't have a sponsor, right? We don't have a favorite. This is just an example, but one of them is ZipRecruiter, right? And this is just one of the many different organizations out there and businesses that they find efficient ways how to find your perfect candidate. Now, I'm going to share my personal experience with ZipRecruiter. For me to fill a lot of positions in a call center, it did not work for me. It doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. You have to go to all those individual businesses and get a demo, figure out which one works for you. Again, this is just an example of what you can do, of all the different avenues out there that you can use to help you fill those positions as quickly as possible. Now, you've worked with ZipRecruiter, right?
Yeah, I've worked at very little. I'm not a big fan of ZipRecruiter also, but I think it works for certain industries too. So, there's so many opportunities out there that we just don't have time to get into today, but this is one option. Go to the next slide. And so I went ahead and made sure that you guys can see pricing. So these are current pricing. This doesn't mean it won't go up or change, but I think one of the reasons people use something like ZipRecruiter is because of the price, and it's, depending on how you're looking at it, it might be affordable, it's probably affordable unless you have a lot of a turnover all the time, and then you're going to have to keep refilling those. Okay. So the next, go to the next slide. So here is just some pros and cons, and this was from betterteam.com, who did an assessment of it. Okay. And so you could post to over 100 job boards, manage candidates in one dashboard. And so that's what I think ZipRecruiter has, again, versus other resources, is it kind of goes out and it helps you. If you're a one-person show and you also are in charge of many other things in HR, this can help you do that. The pricing could be an issue though for small businesses.
And Indeed is another one. That's something that I've used over in my day job, and I've gotten so much great candidates from Indeed, and to me, it's just the Google of the talent world. Right. Yeah. You go in there and you put that post out there, and you're able to paint your picture. You're able to paint that culture. You're able to throw that out there, and that data comes back to you. And now, price wise, for me, that has worked beautifully, right? Because it's, look, not to get too technical in there, but for all the recruiters out there who knows what I'm talking about, you can either pay for click or pay for impression. Is it? It is on the next slide. Perfect, right? So it's how I like to do pay for click, and that way I can manage and capture the return on investment I'm getting from each candidate. So for me, it's that cost me maybe about $1.95 per candidate. Yeah. Whether in other areas it was like $55 per candidate. One time I did a radio ad. Wow. And right? Who does that? Right? But somebody convinced me to do it. That's fine. I did a radio ad, and for 30 days, I think I spent $2,400. So I spent $2,400 on that for 30 days. I got 2 candidates. What's that return on investment per candidate? Yeah, $1,200. So I'm not doing that again.
Stay here a second. But then also it depends. Like, okay, were you looking for something that is, impossible to find, and there's only 2 candidates out there in the world, then it's worth it. But if it's something where, like, no, these people are dime a dozen, then it's not. But Indeed is a great tool. I use Indeed all the time. It's affordable for most companies. It's $100 a month to use. You can post jobs, and then there's so recruiting is not just posting a job and then just sitting and waiting for somebody to apply. You have to actually go out and find people and get them to apply, because they're going to be the passive candidate that they're not thrilled with their current job, but they're not ready to walk away yet unless a great opportunity comes along. Yeah. And sometimes you have to be that great opportunity and knock out the door and say, hey, have this great opportunity. Here's the job ad. Can you apply? With Indeed, on the lowest version, you can, if you're paying $100 a month, then you can only search and contact 30 people. And then you can increase it to $250, and then you could contact 100 people. The one thing that I would say that I caution here is don't just throw just anybody in the recruiting position, because they're going to burn through those 30 and 100 like that. And they're not really searching for the right thing. Go back a minute, go back to this previous slide. So you see here where it says limit search to job titles, skills, and companies. You know, be careful when you're searching there, because it usually automatically clicks to job title. And I try to keep in mind that job titles are not consistent, you know, from company to company. So if you're looking for something that's like an administrative coordinator, well, it may be an administrative assistant in another company, or administrative manager in another company. And so I like to look for the skills, or unclick all those boxes and put the words in there, the most important words of the resume, so to speak, in there, and then search, and then you get a lot.
And Wendy, that's a really good call out, right? Because it's a lot of people put a lot of stake into that job title. And an HR administrator could be something in one company and something completely different at a different company. That's why I tell people exactly what you said. Focus on the keyword, focus on the job description. That's what you have to focus on, as far as from a recruiter's perspective, as far as what you're looking for, right? From an employee or a candidate perspective, right? It's you've got to model that resume. I don't want to say lie, I don't want to say embellish, but you have to model it to the language and the culture for the organization that they're looking for. So that's another webinar that we need to do, how to help people put that resume together, but it's important to call that out here as well. So it's the next one that we have is also LinkedIn. Now it's weird for me to say that that's like the Facebook of the business world.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes people forget that one is Facebook and one is LinkedIn. Right? So how do you use LinkedIn to recruit?
Oh boy. So any business event that I'm at, as soon as I get home from that event, you know, I connect with every single person I met on LinkedIn. And then that way I am in contact with them forever, because LinkedIn is tied to the person, not to the company. So if they leave that job, I'm still connected with them. And then when I'm looking for somebody of their caliber down the road, all I have to do is do a search. So I've used it as free, I've used it as premium, and I've used it as recruiter. If for the folks that are on the phone, if you haven't used LinkedIn Premium or Recruiter, it's awesome, but it's also very expensive for small businesses. And so, you know, for big businesses, if you have it and you're not using it, you're really wasting your time. And so I really like to search for the same thing, search for the key words. And you know, not the job title.
And for the candidates out there listening, for people out on the job hunt, you heard the excitement in Wendy's voice about she as a recruiter using LinkedIn. That should be a cue for you to really be active on LinkedIn, be produce content, whether it's a podcast, whether it's an article, whatever it is. The more active you are in LinkedIn and you have the right keywords in there, somebody like you, somebody explained to me who worked on LinkedIn that the way the algorithm works is that the more this person is active on LinkedIn, that algorithm brings it to your window as a recruiter, as a viable candidate for the keywords that you put in. You've got to be active.
And so for the recruiters or the people who are acting as recruiters on the phone, you have to be active on LinkedIn. You just can't be a voyeur.
I got you.
You know, you have to be active on LinkedIn so that when you share a job ad, even if it's a free, you know, you're sharing something, you don't have the recruiter access, that you are brought to the top of their search, you know, when they open LinkedIn and go, oh, wow, this person's always sharing really great jobs. And then what I always do too, so let's just talk about the free version of LinkedIn, is if I'm sharing a job, like I will share a job for somebody else if I thought it was a cool job or something. And then I make sure I put in my comment, hey, I'm not the recruiter for this, but this looks like a great opportunity. Now I know we've gotten into this before, a little bit before, about the pay. And so for me, and we don't agree on this, so get ready for a battle here. But for me, I will not share a job if the compensation is not listed. And one of the reasons, or the main reason, is I feel that that means the employer doesn't know what they want. Or B, that means the employer is going to try to hire somebody for the lowest pay possible. And I think both of those are wrong.
And I disagree. And the reason I disagree is because I don't want, if I put the pay out there, right, and that may not be the pay that that perfect candidate may be thinking of, but it is in their range, I lose the opportunity of having to talk to them and the opportunity to connect and sell the idea of not just the pay, but the culture as well. So you know what? Maybe the pay is not exactly what you want it to be, but if it's in that range, let me talk to you about the culture. Let me talk to you. Oh, you're telling me you got kids? I didn't ask if you had kids, but you're telling me you got kids and you told me that you have trouble finding daycare? Guess what? We have on-site daycare. Guess what? We have on-site cleaning. We got all these other things that I may or may not have the opportunity to talk to you about. If you see the pay and it scared you away, I don't have that opportunity.
But you're going to have all that daycare and on-site cleaning in your wonderful marketing piece and the job ad.
No, correct. You are 100% right. But if the pay scares them, how can I emphasize it?
So here's what my thoughts on that are too. So it goes even a step further. It depends. So how complicated is the application tool that you're using?
Yes.
So if you force them to complete this complicated application, and you know what I'm talking about, that it takes 7 hours to complete this, and you can't submit without 4 written references, and they have to be recent, and
geez,
that you're killing it.
Really
Anybody who's on the edge of like, is already like, I'm out, peace out. Yeah. Now, if it's just send me your resume, or here's a quick application or something like that, then that's when I think somebody who's on the edge and maybe doesn't have the pay in there can message and say, what's the pay? Now, the other thing that I would say is if you're still not sure, with the pay, maybe put a range in there. And, commiserate with experience,
I mean, I get it. I mean, I guess I would agree with you, but then we would both be wrong, right? So I'm not going to go with that. That's fine.
I'm standing firm. Wouldn't it just be nice if everybody just told the truth?
Right? I'm with you. All right. So preview of the workforce agency. Why is that important?
So these are free resources. If it's everybody's budget. Yeah, if it's everybody's budget, we put on here just 3 states, Florida, Georgia, and Virginia, which I believe we have people that are signed up today for those states. So figure out what resources are available. And there's a lot more resources, even in Florida, for example, where we are. But Florida, Career Source Florida, used to be all these different agency names, and now they're one. But, with some companies, well, first of all, if you're on unemployment, so somebody was terminated for whatever reason and they're on unemployment, they're actually supposed to be using the Career Source as a candidate to prove that they're looking for a job. And so there's free resumes on there. Furthermore, and again, I'm talking about Career Source, but I've used some of these other states as well, is that they actually have people that are paid with our tax dollars that are there to help you. Some of them
take advantage of it, though.
Yeah, some of them aren't great, so just keep calling till you get somebody else. But they really, if you can get a free recruiter, so to speak, from your local agency, and they can help recruit for you. Yeah. And then the other thing is with public organizations, so, county, state, federal, they have to post their jobs on Career Source, for example.
That is true, yeah.
And so, why aren't you using it? Now, I do have to say, some of as the employer to set up your account on there, it could sometimes be a little cumbersome. Yeah. But once you do it, I think I hear a lot of business owners say, oh, that's outdated. And they've changed. They really have changed. At least here in Florida, they have.
They have, because I've used them 15 years ago and I've used them 2 years ago. It is radically different, right? And look, it's free for us. It is funded by taxpayers, but their vested interest in this is to get people working. Right. When you get people working, people start paying taxes, putting money into the economy. It helps everybody, but it's out there. It's free. Use them. And trust me, if you are able to bring in, as a recruiter, you're able to bring in somebody into the organization to be profitable at a low cost, your business partner, the business leader, would thank you for that.
Yeah. And then the other thing is they have all either internally in their agency or, with their connections, they also work with, veterans, with the disabled, with, a lot of different types of people that may be a perfect fit for your organization, but you didn't know how to get there. And guess what? They're going to do it for you. For free.
It would help you for EEO purposes and affirmative action programs. So it will help perfectly. Awesome. All right. So social media, man, let me tell you, as far as social media is concerned, that is the gateway to the world, and you have to learn how to navigate that. So you pull some stats from Talvia that 75% of workers between the ages of 18 to 34 found their most recent jobs via social media, and also 48% of job applicants in a recent survey are active in social media. Staggering numbers, because it's this time 20 years ago that I don't have those stats, but I'm pretty sure it was next to zero because we didn't have social media as relevant as it is right now. But that takes it above and beyond from simple applying for a job. Right? Because you can't just apply for a job. You got to be active out there, because you just said it yourself. You spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and Indeed, and that's where you find that. So not too much to spend on that. I mean, it's pretty much
really not, but even like, Facebook, you can post jobs for free on Facebook. Now, let's talk about that in another session with social media, but use it. It's free. Yeah. It's free. It's there.
Just go ahead and use it. All right. So now we talked about it's how do we bring people in and establish that foundation. So what I want to talk about right now is, once you get the candidate in, let's talk about that candidate experience. So let me preface this by saying this. It's by this time, you have already sold the idea to the candidate. Let's make believe this candidate has 10 other offers, and now you are 9 other offers. You are one of 10 who are trying to vie for their attention. So what I want to focus on, if we focus a lot of time and attention on bringing them in, let's focus the equal or even more attention and time to the candidate experience, right? So candidate experience. Here, to me, how this works best is if you act as the GPS for the candidate. And here's what I mean. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I've applied for a job, it's like I'm in a maze. I got headphones on. I can't hear or see anything, and I'm just trying to feel my way around, right? Because I apply, I don't hear anything back until about 3 weeks, and it's either, I'm sorry, we gotta, we have your resume, everything looks great, but we selected somebody else, or somebody calls me and says, hey, come in for an interview this afternoon, right? Yeah. And it's not a good experience. I start freaking out. So what I like to do, whenever we have the recruiter connecting with that person first, and we're going to invite them to the next step, that recruiter should really give them an overview of what to expect. Right? This is the first interview. You can expect talking to this person. Right. This is what's going to happen. Then after you're done with that, you're either going to get a call to let you know, yes, you're moving on to the next step, or no, I'm sorry, you're not selected, and maybe give some feedback depending on the position. And then, but if you do that and they have a really good understanding of what to expect, and they have that light in that maze, that kind of gives them that more value added experience to will actually go through the process. Because there's nothing worse than having a candidate ghost you when they were supposed to be, and that's a millennium term, ghost, right? Is that what it is? I don't know. I'm a Gen Xer. So ghost meaning no call, no show to the interview. Whereas if they knew what to expect, they have that more of a vested interest in it, and the follow through, right?
Yeah, so here, 2 things. One, the candidate experience, as we've been talking about, starts way before they become a candidate. Yeah. So is so important. You have to get that in your mind. 2, a lot of the tools we talked about are internet-based tools. We tend to get casual with that, and so I know, like for Indeed, which many employers use because of the cost, and they have some really great tools on Indeed too, of assessments. You're kind of canned, but at least it's something. But I find that we start treating it like it's a text message, and then the candidate just doesn't take it seriously because you're using slang and casual words. So you still have to be the professional. Absolutely. And follow up and make sure the more information you give them of, hey, this is going to take 2 weeks, 6 months, whatever, then they can say, okay, I was warned.
Perfect. So one of the things that I have seen in my previous lives as a recruiter is that when we bring somebody in, we spend, again, a lot of time, money, and effort in the whole recruiting process to just bring them in. They actually do come in, and when they start meeting the hiring authority or the interviewer for the first time, we don't have a spot for them. They're not ready. The table is dirty. They just came back from lunch. There's chili dog all over their shirt. It screams, I'm not prepared, and it screams, run away, right? Run away. So what I like to do, I like to give senior leaders and the hiring authorities these tips when it comes to setting up the interview. It takes a little bit of prep time before, much like a restaurant that they don't just slap stuff together and cook. They got to prep. They got to cut the onions. They got to do the things. That's what we need to do. So once you know that you're about to go into an interview, let's say at 1 p.m., about 12 noon, you want to find a nice, quiet area to converse. There's nothing worse than conducting an interview when there's so many distractions out there. I don't know, like a cafeteria. Right? You don't want to do that in the cafeteria. It's got to be nice and quiet. And you got to set it up in a way that it sounds like a really good conversation, not necessarily an interview. You got to make sure it's neat, and you got to make sure that you have everything you need, right?
Yes, including hand sanitizer.
Yeah. Dual purpose, right? For them and for you. Yeah. Absolutely. And no distractions. Wendy, this gets under my skin, right? I have an Apple Watch, right?
Oh,
There's
boy.
nothing worse, right, than talking to somebody. And for anybody out there that has a smartwatch, there's nothing worse than you get a text message, it comes to your watch. And when you're talking to somebody, you want to look at your watch, right? Like, oh, so-and-so send me a text message. What does that tell you?
I'm out of time.
Or I'm boring the hell out of that person. I'm boring the
depending on what generation you're in, and I don't have a smartwatch for that reason. They may think that you're looking like, all right, we gotta go.
Exactly.
Speaking
right?
of, we gotta go.
We do. So no distractions. Just turn off your phone. No multitasking.
Right.
With that said, technology is there.
Yeah.
I recently had a situation where I had a senior leader where I did have a senior leader that he didn't really know how to use technology, and we had a really good candidate that was 2 states away. But he did not want to have that conversation because I'm like, he's not going to be here, so I'm not going to interview them. Yeah. I'm like, dude, use Skype, use FaceTime, use Tango, use Google Hangout. All those things are there, so they are there for you. So why not use them to your discretion? So
yeah, the biggest thing I would say about this is, if you're going to use any kind of service, Zoom, whatever it might be, to do an interview, just be a little kind to the person on the other side who may never have used that service, or you're interviewing them for a job that does not require technology and you expect them to use technology. Yeah. So, and there could be an age thing or a cultural thing as well. So,
absolutely.
Barrier.
All right, so the resume. So now you have the resume part of your prep time. Review the resume ahead of time. It's so awkward just sitting there. You just met, you got some small talk, and this like 2 minutes of silence. Like, give me a second while I review your interview. It's just so awkward.
Yeah,
right?
Well, it shows that the interviewer is not professional and is not prepared. No. And if you on the phone. For our people on the phone, if you're the recruiter, it's your responsibility to make sure that the interviewer is prepared. If you're giving a resume to an interview and they don't ever check their mail, then print it out and hand it to them.
There you go. So review the experience, review the knowledge, skills, and abilities, and review the gaps. Gaps are not necessarily negative, right? But you do want to speak to them. You do want to ask what those gaps are, and then based on what they tell you, then you make a determination on whether it's kind of sketchy or not.
Exactly.
Right? But they're not 100% a negative. One great example would be if you have somebody who has a great skill set, but for the past 4 years, they were a stay-at-home parent. right? That's not a disqualifier, right? Because even if you're a stay-at-home parent and if he was a homemaker for about 5 or 6 years, it takes some organization skills. It takes a lot of balancing. So there's some skills there that are transferable into the
They would work really well on a patient job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So pre-send the job description. Why would they do that? Why would anybody do that?
Yeah. Why would you want people to know what they're interviewing for? So if you don't have the job description, accessible via the job ad, because of course we're not going to make the job ad the entire job description unless it's short enough. Make sure that they're able to look at it. Why? Because this is what you're hiring them for, and this is what you're holding them accountable for the rest of their career.
And it's also helps you out legally, because if you have an ABA issue,
right,
then this is the document that's going to guide that conversation. Absolutely. Right? So if somebody says, I can or cannot perform these duties, then they have to know what those duties are for you to go ahead and go down that dynamic dialogue path to figure out if you need to have some kind of a reasonable accommodation or not.
Right. And so the bottom line here is job descriptions are mandatory.
Absolutely.
They are not optional.
True. I mean, if you want to test the optional theory, I mean, there's a lot of lawsuits out there that would kind of send that to you. That's perfect. All right. So get to know your interview guide. It's so awkward where you're the hiring authority and you've presumably have done this plenty of times, and you're reading the questions like a robot, and the first time you've ever seen this, it just doesn't send the right message. So familiarize yourself with the questions or create them in advance, but you've got to be able to take a look at them in a way that they should guide you. You shouldn't be reading them because it shouldn't feel like an interview. I know it is an interview, but it should feel like a really good conversation.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I want to just say also, like sometimes the recruiter is going to be the first interviewer. Obviously you're matching the skills, but for my clients, I will say, okay, I'll do the first screening. You could do some of those via email.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to, if you have 10 positions to fill in, you need to fill like in 2 days, you can send them out via email or some other service that it forces the candidate to do it. I'd just be careful with that if it's not a job that requires email. Because then you're forcing somebody, oh, well, they didn't email me. Well, they don't have a computer and this job doesn't require that. So be careful of that, but make sure that your interviewers have the interview questions in advance. They should be asking the same questions to all of the candidates. Obviously, more questions will probably come out of it. I have natural conversations, but they should be asking the same questions.
And that's why you need those interview guides to help avoid those. So it's a consistent tool. It keeps everything on track, right? So setting the stage, greeting the applicant, small talk, right? Get some small talk going. Hey, how you doing? Hi, how's the weather? Oh, you're a Boston Red Sox fan? Yeah, you're fired before you got hired. Just kidding. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't listen to him. Listen to me on this one.
Hold on. Yeah, JC just he's a Red Sox fan. Weird.
But it's really, put the candidate at ease. It's we do this every day, but that it could be, really, really stressful for a candidate. And so if they're humming and hawing or sweating or whatever, get over yourself. We all are different, so help them.
And the idea behind putting them at ease is because the more relaxed they are, the more they tell you about themselves, and you really want to know that because you want to know the person. You don't want somebody who has their guard up, right? So, but small talk, you got to be careful though, right? Because if you get too comfortable, you may go down the path and have conversations that you're not supposed to be having, which brings us to the next slide about what not to ask during the interview. So I'm going to go through this real quick because we're running out of time. So the origin of their name. Some of these are really, really, I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah, all of these, you can just open them all up. But all of these, like if you start asking questions or they give you information and you're like, oh, Belle's here. I'm not supposed to. I just go, okay, next question. And I just kind of move on. But these questions, depending how they're asked, can be illegal.
Yes.
And so, I mean, for my clients, what I do is I literally give them a list of, here's topics that can get you in trouble. This is what you can't ask. This is what you can. And some of it's, no, you can't ask this, like ever.
Got it. And but to me, I've seen situations where that small talk kind of gets them in, and they get all nice and comfortable. And oh my God, you're from Ohio? I'm from Ohio too. What high school did you go to? Well, I went to this high school. Yeah. When did you graduate? Boom, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
In trouble, right?
Yeah, or they mention their spouse, and you're like, oh, you just got married, and they're like, oh yeah, we're planning on having a baby. Oh, you're out. And so you just have to be very careful.
So Wendy, let me ask you, during the interview, if a candidate volunteers that information, what do you do with it?
I just move on to the next question.
100%.
I literally like don't even address it. I just go, okay, so we're going to move on to the next question.
Absolutely, folks. Please do not engage in that conversation. If somebody brings that up, you've got to find a way how to move on to the next question with ease, and is a smooth transition. Do not engage in that conversation. And for God's sakes, do not write anything down on the interview.
And then the other thing I would say also is learn to control your facial expressions.
Poker face. So, all right. So when we recruit, Wendy, who are we looking for? We need to hire the what talent?
The right talent.
For the
right positions with the wonderful detailed job description.
But how do you find that, right? How do you know you have that right talent there?
You get more than one person involved in the interview.
True, all right, because that gives you different points of view, right, on that person. So what I like to look for not just on the experience, I like to focus on the work ethic. Like, look, skill set is good. It's good to have that skill set, but I'm not as concerned about skill set as I am on how you're going to use that skill set for my organization. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got to make sure they got the minimum qualifications, but at the same time, you have to bring out the candidate how they're going to use that for you.
Absolutely, and you know, the work ethic is super important, but you can't just say, "How's your work ethic?"
Yeah,
because everyone's just going to say, great.
It's great.
So
it's awesome.
What you need to do is you need to find out what's important to your company. It's usually in your company values. And if you don't have company values, you need to create them. And I can help you with that because it's what both of my books are about. And then ask questions that are not yes, no questions on those company values. So we should not just be interviewing on performance. We should be interviewing on behavior.
Absolutely. And also I want to take this time out to really thank Wendy. Wendy, I love you. I want to thank you for making sure you got a picture of me in my normal workout routine for this event. Thank you I really appreciate it. That was me last week on my normal Orange Theory fitness routines that I do. All right. So what else do we
So this is exactly what I was just talking about, is the attitude and the values. And so, you know, every company is different. We can't sit here and tell you, like, this is what you're looking for. Yeah. You have to figure that out. So this requires a lot of homework ahead of time before you're hiring somebody.
Absolutely. All right. So interview guide, note-taking, they got to be legible. You've got to keep the notes related to the interview. Somebody tells you something that is kind of iffy or exactly how we talked about before, just ignore it. Do not put it down, because if we ever end up in a situation where you have to read these to a jury, you gotta be. I've heard those before, and you know, when you read them in the office, that's hilarious. It is the complete opposite when you're in a deposition and they're reading it to you.
Yeah,
it's not fun at all.
The other thing is also, I think there's one more point on here. So, notes have to reflect what they actually said, not just what you interpreted. And so this could be if you end up in court, but then also if you are an organization that receives government funding, either a public organization or you could just be a government contractor, depending on where you're at. And most of these things are public information.
Yes, it is.
And so I was conducting an interview the other day to hire a very high level person to run the agency. And I informed all the board members of this, and not one of them took notes because it scared them. And so, but it was also that those type of situations are also recorded.
Yes.
So the recording is still going to be on there as well.
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. So only write down what's relevant to the interview, nothing else.
Correct.
Nothing else. All right. So now we've interviewed them and we have made our selection. We've selected this one person. And so that's it. We just focus on that person and forget about everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else that took the time out of their day to request the day off, pay money for that babysitter, took 2 buses to get to you. We're not going to give them any feedback. We're just going to send them that generic email that says, thank you, but no thank you. You wasted your time with us. Good luck with the rest of your life. That's what we do, right?
Most of the employers don't even send the generic email.
They don't do that.
You know? And so the other thing that I would say, if this is a position, for example, like one that I just had to fill, it was a 6-month process.
Yeah.
And so I let everybody know in the beginning that this is a 6-month process. So if you need a job in the next month, this isn't the job for you. And, you know, as they were ruled out during that process, I let them know immediately.
Yeah. So
and 6 months later, you get an email. By the way, you're not getting hired. Really? Yeah. I figured that out already.
I figured that out on my own. I've been in the parking lot.
And why does that matter? Why does that matter?
Why? Because
people can go to social media.
Absolutely.
And they just destroy your brand.
But, okay, so forget social media for a second. So how that matters is that how that can fix your brand is that if you don't get that job, you're like, holy crap, they gave me the feedback. They really took the time to let me know why I didn't get that position. It wasn't that I'm a horrible employer or a horrible person. It's just, this is the skill set that they needed, and that happened to be that area of opportunity. But I would never have known that if they didn't give me that feedback.
Yeah.
So how would you as a candidate feel if somebody calls you, right, and tell you that? So now that gives you a different point of a different view of my brand. Yeah. Right? Like, wow, they really care about the process. So now instead of that person saying forget them, they're like, I'm gonna go work on that, and I'm gonna go back because I want to be a part of that that organization. So feedback, folks, is crucial. Even for the folks that don't get that position, give them that feedback. There will be a walk-in advertisement for your process. All right, so now we're almost there after the offer. So I've seen this a lot too, Wendy, where they spend a lot of money on advertising, a lot of money on bringing people in, a lot of money on interviewing them, on selecting, and then once we bring them on board, we forget about them.
Yeah.
We just forget about them.
The new guy.
Yeah. So after the offer, look, it's for me, I do know that I don't care how comfortable I am in an interview process. If I go through that process and I feel good, I'm still a little bit skeptical. And I'm like, am I okay in giving 2-week notice of this organization I've been with for 10 years? And I don't even know what's going to happen. Yeah. And you want to continue to reinforce the positive aspect of them saying yes. Enforce it. And this is how you do it, right? Because if you as a leader, you call them and you congratulate them, hey, welcome to the team. We can't wait to see you on board, and you can expect A, B, and C. That speaks volume versus not getting a call at all. And they show up on the first day of orientation and nobody's expecting them, and their information isn't ready. So call the associate, congratulate them, and welcome to the team. What else can they do? They can make sure you have a robust onboarding plan.
What's an onboarding plan?
Thank you for asking. So an onboarding plan is when you bring somebody on board and you have the map laid out for them of what they can expect in the next 12 weeks.
Wouldn't that be great for the entire team that you're about to work with to know? You know, because that's what happens. Like we don't have enough time as employers. We don't have enough time, and we do the would've, could've, should've, I wish, and then it never happens. And then we're mad at the new hire for not being able to do this skill, that skill, whatever skill it is. But you told them in the interview that you would train them for that, but then you just forgot about it because you got busy. Well, if you had an onboarding plan, you put it on everybody's schedule, everybody who's supposed to be doing the training or whatever it is, then boom, it'll be taken care of. And guess what? The person won't quit.
Exactly. And that's part of that GPS. Yeah. That's part of it. What to expect during training, right? Don't go in there dark. Know what to expect. Check in on them every week. Right? Don't forget about them. I tell my recruiters, as soon as you bring people in, let's go ahead and go into orientation. Let's check on them. Let's go into training. Let's check on them, because they still associate you as the face of that organization, right? So check in on them every week. Talk about career aspirations, but most importantly, what's the most important part?
I don't know.
We're here to help.
It really is. It is. And so I think we're, like wrapping this up is, recruiting is so much more than recruiting these days. You're a salesperson, you're a cheerleader, you're a coach. I mean, if you are keeping in touch with the people that you hired, and I know everybody's busy and you're like, I've got more people I've got to recruit, but maybe the new hire can tell you something that said, hey, this didn't go right. And then you as a recruiter you shouldn't say, not my territory, not my department. You should say, no, I'm going to go talk to somebody because I just sold this candidate this bill of goods and you're not actually doing it.
Absolutely.
And so either let me not sell this bill of goods or let me help fix it.
No, correct. And you know what? And all you have to do is just let that candidate or now employee know exactly what they need to expect through their probationary period, right? Because you love probationary period.
I'm going to strangle him. I'm going to strangle him.
Probationary period, right? So we just tell them,
no, stop the interview. Stop the interview.
We're going to go ahead and put a big sign on them that says, it's probationary guy. Have him walk all over the office just like that.
No. So for those that are tuning in, I hate the word probation. Hello, we've just spent thousands to get you on the team. All this time, sold you this bill of goods that may or may not be true, and you're on probation. Really?
You have to use that voice. Yes.
Yeah, it has to be. Because that's what they hear. They're like, what? Welcome to the team. You're on probation because you've done something wrong. I didn't even start. I'm on probation. Use it. I don't care what you call it. Call it something else.
The first 90.
The first 90.
That's
so
we
were arguing about this last night, and then that's what we're going to call it from now on.
The first 90.
The first 90.
Yep.
Now, keep in mind, it doesn't have to be 90 days. It could be 30 days. It could be 60. It could
4
be
years.
It could be 4 years, whatever it is. Most states, in Florida anyways, 90 days is associated with if you terminate somebody before 90 days, they cannot file unemployment. Yeah. So your state may be different. And that's where this whole 90 comes from. But for some positions, it might need to be 6 months.
Yep.
You know, some positions, it could be 30 days. I find that whatever you call it, so we're going to call it first 90, that's where your scheduled training and everything should be covered in the first 90. And the recruiter should be someone involved in the beginning to make sure everything's involved, everything's scheduled. Okay, you're going in the right direction. Okay, now I'm going to back off and go back to recruiting for something else.
Absolutely. And then that right there, that leads into, depending if they like the organization, it's if you set that up for those first 90, and you set it up well. And by talking about setting it up is as an HR leader, not just a recruiter, you really have to focus on that culture. But what good is a culture if you can communicate it and people can breathe it and people can live it? You have to figure out ways how to communicate that, whether it's a web page for it or even, seriously, a podcast, right? You get somebody like JC in there to create a podcast for you that you can talk to the employees and you focus on the core values of the organization. You go ahead and curate that podcast and you curate everything and you put it on social media, and that recruiter can use that to share and sell the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And here's the other thing too. I just did this with a client. So again, for the clients that don't have this whole pot of gold to spend on a podcast or whatever, to take your iPhone or your phone and use that. I just did this with a very difficult to fill position for a manufacturing client that we went in and we had the owner and the managers in the video, because otherwise you would need to have everybody sign everything to say you can use my face. And we did a video shoot of them doing the job.
Yes.
And it was a manual labor job. It didn't require a lot of skills, but it did require very specific details and the ability to lift 65 pounds up, down all day long. And so we did a video, and then out of that video, I took screenshots, and it's on their career page now. And when people are applying, this is a low paid position. So when people are applying, I say, one of my questions is, did you watch the video? Yeah. And then they have to respond back yes or no before they can actually apply.
There you go.
So use technology to your benefit. It's here. It doesn't need to be this big fancy process. It'd be great if it is, but start small, use technology, give realistic job previews of not just the job, but the culture, and then actually follow through with it. And don't put somebody on probation day one.
No, don't do it. Absolutely not, folks. So, folks, if you do this, I'm telling you, it will speak volume. And if you make the candidate and or employee feel like they made the right choice to come on board, then you're more likely to keep that talent even further. They're going to stick with you, and you got to keep communicating that culture. But if you follow this process, because at the end of the day, it's not about the recruiter, it's not about the manager. When the organization extends the offer, that employment relationship doesn't start until that candidate says yes, right?
Yeah, and
when
then,
they say yes, then you have to take that yes, you carry it for those first 90, and they're going to continue on until either you or they decide to do something else with it.
exactly. And if you can get your candidate, which becomes your employee, to fall in love with you, they will recruit for you.
Absolutely. If they fall in love with you, it's not a good relationship, then we have a sexual harassment webinar in a couple of months that Wendy will be great for talking. But look, folks, so we are at that time. I mean, it's you are able to find us, actually me, on social media. Wendy, the HR Lady Sellers, you can find her on social media as well. If you have any questions later on, or just you want more information, please reach out to us and just let us know. This is something we enjoy doing. I know you do. I know
absolutely.
I do.
We love helping people. And so connect with us on LinkedIn, although we are on every social media, but definitely connect with us on LinkedIn and send us messages if you have any questions. Do we have any questions?
We're
right
about
now?
to bring that up right now. Give me one quick second. Do we have a question? So hold on. Let me see to the degree. So here we go. We do have, oh, no.
There's
Let
two
me
questions.
see. Yeah,
Yep.
no, they are. So hold on. One is privately, and then one is not. So let me go ahead. It's how was the resume database in ZipRecruiter? We're looking for it as an option. So for ZipRecruiter, how is that database? I haven't used it in years.
I haven't used it in years either.
Yeah.
I think it's not bad. I think a lot of candidates. So I'll tell you, I help a lot of candidates do their resume and prepare for interviews as well. It's kind of like usually a side thing that I have there. And I tell candidates to load their stuff on ZipRecruiter.
Okay.
So it is out there, but it depends on what you're looking for the cost.
Yeah.
With that said, I mean, LinkedIn is expensive too. If you want to get recruiter access for LinkedIn, it's not affordable for small businesses, but what you can do for either one is maybe get a trial period. And I like to connect, me personally, I have about almost 10,000 people connected on LinkedIn. And
10,000?
Yeah, wow. I'm almost at 10,000. Wow. And it's from recruiting. It was from the days when I was recruiting. And so I make sure that I, as a recruiter, connect with everybody on LinkedIn, because I might not need you now, but I might need you 2 years down the road for another client, or when you're at a different job.
And that's how networking works right there. So you got the social media networking. And another thing that I tell both candidates and recruiters is networking events. Networking events works wonders. We're fresh off the heels of Disrupt HR Gainesville with us, your networking event, and we just did that over there. So many business cards fly back and forth, and it's the story I like to tell people is, if you have a recruiter that got 500 resumes in front of them, and if they happen to meet somebody and make that human connection right at that event, and they go back to their office and they know they applied, guess what? Out of those 500 resumes, 499 go in the trash. They're going to focus on yours. Why? They shook your hand. They got to know you as a person, and they get to fill that position quickly for that hiring authority.
The other thing I want to say just about the question about the recruiting, the database. So I do think it's good. If it's in your budget, I would go for it, because I find with some positions, I get better candidates by reaching out to the candidate than a candidate's applying. So again, they're passive, and or they just weren't looking that week because it was a good week at their current job, but their resume's out there. And then I go, hey, I found this job for you. If you're interested, apply. And then they email me back, this is great. Can you give me more information? Is it time consuming? Yeah, it's time consuming.
I tend to find that I get the best candidates when they're passively looking and they're actively looking.
Yep.
I tend to find that. And the reason I found that is that when they're passively looking, they're more direct in what in their skill set and how they communicate it. Whereas the actively looking one, they're really motivated, and they may embellish a couple of things, maybe not.
Motivated.
So maybe oversell what they got real quick. Exactly, right? So whereas somebody who is just passively looking, they don't know, they're going to give you the real deal.
Yeah, I agree.
Deal,
so if you can get access to profiles, resumes, sometimes that is a better way to do it than a job ad. But then, I would try to do both. But, sometimes recruiters are asked to fill positions that aren't actually public because they haven't canned the other person yet. And so ZipRecruiter would be a good one. And then even Indeed and LinkedIn. But if you don't have the paid version, you're limited on what you can search.
Absolutely.
Was there another question?
No, there wasn't. Okay. No, I'm looking right now. There isn't anything else flashing. The information is out there, but nothing else. I think it's that time, Wendy.
All right.
I really think it's that time. JC, anything else you wanted to add, sir?
We do have a special question that came in on the private line over here, if you'd like for me to read that too.
Yes, sir.
When we're thinking about recruiting for the future and attracting that talent moving forward, what is the best way that you could figure out how to assess the behavioral and cognitive abilities of that new applicant, especially when they're inflating their resume to overshoot the applicant tracking system?
So there are so many tools out there. I personally am a trainer for DISC, personality assessments, but it's not for everybody. So, but that's something that I do. I have a client that uses, PI, personality. I think it's a predictive index. So there's a lot of, opportunities out there. It comes down to what are you willing to pay, what's the budget, and then some of those tools require the recruiter or the HR team to be trained and or certified. And so let me just put it this way. You get what you pay for.
You do.
You get what you pay for.
And exactly how you said, it's not for everybody. I don't necessarily use it. One of my favorite ways to recruit, to interview, is for me to really get to know that person. I really focus on the human aspect of it, right? So I have structured questions. I have an interview process. But once you get to know that candidate, I like to kind of put them at ease.
Yeah.
So sometimes, depending what I'm recruiting for, I change the venue and we just go to lunch. Let's meet at Chili's, right? Let's meet at Chili's. Let's have a conversation. And for me to really get what they're excited about, I really like to so for example, if I want somebody to work on Excel and I want somebody to really work on PowerPoint, I really like to ask them questions about that. And if I see them light up and they get goosebumps and they start nerding out on it, I know that's the right person for me.
Yeah.
Right.
So again, the other thing that the final thing that I want to say on that one is align your questions with your company values.
Yes.
And so you can ask questions and just make sure the questions aren't yes/no questions.
Yes. And
because they're going to tell you whatever you want to hear.
All right, folks. So we are at that time. I want to thank you very much for joining Wendy and myself. You can find Wendy, the HR Lady Sellers, online. You can find Ricky Baez by Esco Learning online as well. And even if you want somebody to do interest for you, you can find JC online as well on the Biesco website in HR Talk. With that said, thank you very much. Stay tuned for the next one in 30 days. That's going to go out in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Biesco Learning, Recruiting for the Future, How to Attract Talent in 2020 and Beyond, featuring the HR Lady, Wendy Sellers, with Ricky Baez.